18 minutes past 6, Gen Z gets a bad rap when it comes to the workplace, but it turns out they could be getting a pretty raw deal when it comes to their experiences at work. Young women and non-binary people make up more of the workforce than ever before, but experience workplace discrimination at much higher rates. A survey by Gender at Work found 1 in 3 young female professionals experience bullying and discrimination in the workplace. For more, Teresa Lee from Gender at Work joins us now. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
What are some of the stories that you've heard from the survey that you've conducted?
Yes, well, we surveyed over 600 young women and non-binary people across Aotearoa and across various industries about their workplace experiences. And a lot of them did report a lot of insensitive and inappropriate behaviour, bullying, harassment and discrimination, and that they were experiencing overt and subtle sexism, ageism, racism, fat phobia, queer phobia, and it's really not good enough, and it's a really call for workplaces to step up and actually address these issues. We also found that 38% reported experiencing bullying, harassment and discrimination in their current workplace. So we could expect that that might even be higher if it was all workplaces, not just their current place of work. And we know that also 42% said that they had reported this behaviour, whereas only 28% didn't want to report it, so they didn't, and then 28% did want to report it and they didn't. So it shows that there are still significant barriers as well for sharing what's going on and speaking up.
Okay, so why do you think we are seeing now this move where people are more willing to come forward, and it seems like Gen Z is more willing to sort of stake their claim now? Yes.
Well, as you said, Gen Z are about to make up almost 30% of the workforce, and they're the most diverse generation to enter the workforce. And they're also one of the most informed and incisive, having grown up with the internet. And so they really want to see that they're valued in the workplace, that their work makes a good impact, and they have very reasonable expectations of personal and professional development. So they want to know that workplaces are actually going to be safe, supportive and inclusive, not only because that's all of our human rights, but also because they know workplaces can do better.
You use the words reasonable expectation, and I wonder whether that is the phrase that causes the most tension between Gen Z and the other generations in terms of how they're perceived. Do you think that's fair? Yes.
Gen Z are definitely reshaping work culture, and they're really pushing for more balanced and more fulfilling ways of working.
Okay, so from the other side, often we hear from the older generation that this generation is entitled, it's lazy, it doesn't want to work in the way that they've done it before. What's the response to that?
I think that young non-binary people are just very brave and very courageous in sharing what they want from the workplace, and what they're pushing for, things like transparency, looking after your well-being, work-life balance and flexibility. These are things that benefit all employees, not just young workers.
Are there any industries in particular that you found that this was more of a problem in than others?
We surveyed people across industries, so there weren't any industry-specific insights at this point.
I imagine for things like, for instance, in the medical profession, it's going to be harder to fight back, right? It's a very institutionalized way of doing things. You can't just sort of say, I'm going to stick to my hours, that kind of thing. Do you find that people would see that being as harder to push back in?
Yes, I definitely think that different industries have different dynamics, but in the end we know that bullying, harassment and discrimination occur across industries, and that across these industries it can be really hard to speak up.
I mean, that's the serious side of it, right? We do kind of joke about the intergenerational pushback and how they're different and whatnot, but what you're talking about is a bit more, well, a lot more serious.
Yes. I definitely think that bullying, harassment and discrimination, they have a major impact on the people who directly experience it, from income security to their mental health, to their careers and to their household well-being. And on the other side, there are also major economic costs for organisations and employers, as well as the whole country.
So we've obviously got HR in place in businesses to make sure this sort of thing can be dealt with. Do you feel like that's a good first step and it's giving them more protection now than it has in the past?
Yes, I think that having, say, policy or visible DEI, diversity, equity and inclusion commitment is just a starting point, and just showing all your employees that you want to give visible and tangible support and that you're willing to listen. And I think that's really the first step, to say we want to hear your voices, we want to hear your feedback, and we're going to take that on board.
seems like Gen Z is asking for more expectations from their employers. What about when the employer says, look, you also have to show some resilience in some way, and not everything is bullying, not every behaviour that is sort of shown is bullying. You just have to deal with it as part of being in the workforce. How do you respond to that?
I think that it's the right of everybody to have safety at work, to have equal employment opportunities, and I think that we can all keep pushing towards making sure everyone has those rights respected.
Teresa Lee, really appreciate you coming to the studio. It's going to generate a lot of discussion, I'm sure, so thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for talking with me.
Teresa Lee, I'm a fan of yours. You're amazing. That was really, for me, it opened up my mind in terms of my views on Gen Z, because I am one of those who always assumed Gen Z was entitled, was lazy, but having listened to that interview, it has opened my mind.
Changed his mind on a whole generation.
Not many people come into the studio and change Daniel Faitaua's mind, so that's a badge of honour.
And I loved how Chris asked that question in terms of whether Gen Z is sensitive, because when you hear that, you notice more, your generation notices more, or picks up more on the bullying culture. I'm glad that Chris did put to you whether it was because your generation is sensitive, but I just love the answer you came back with. Yeah, that was a really great discussion, I thought. I just really enjoyed that, Teresa Lee. Really, really cool. Where have you been? I was just wondering, how do we not know about Teresa Lee?
She's been fighting the good fight on the front lines.
Exactly. Generation Z, be proud, be proud. Let us know what you think. The question is, are Gen Z truly different from other generations? And if so, what makes them different? Because our generation, I guess we were the generation, well, you're younger than me, Stokesy.
Much younger.
Taught to, much younger. We were taught head down, butt up, and you just work.
So discrimination in the workplace to women is nothing, we've all been through that, isn't it? But I think Gen Z or the younger generation are more willing to call it out than perhaps the rest of us were.
Yeah, and I guess for us, it was just that culture that became
I also wonder whether those that have gone through it now see the next generation coming through, and there's a little bit of, I don't know, maybe a bit of bitterness that they're actually being able to potentially enjoy what they're entitled to now, as opposed to what they had to go through, and they sort of think, I've gone through the hard stuff, you should have to do it as well. So maybe there's a little bit of that.
Yeah, I find it really eye-opening to see young women and in the workplace being so strident and calling things out. I think it's great. I love the confidence of it.